The crazy thing is, I've been recording this for 11 minutes now, and turns out I wasn't recording. So this is going to be even harder, because now I have to talk about this all over again. But here we go. Hi, I'm Nastya, and I'm a drug addict. This episode is unscripted, except for some notes that I have here. I've been an addict if we get into the perspective of saying that every single addict is an addict forever, then I've been an addict for 15 or 16 years. I was an active drug use for 7 years, and I've been clean for 8 until recently I relapsed. And that sort of motivated me to do this episode. I have so much anxiety. This is not even funny. I remember that when I briefly moved to Russia for a few years, I went on this podcast as a guest to talk about my BPD, and that made me feel better, and that made me feel like I'm not ashamed of it anymore. So I hope that this is going to be the same thing, because I've been wanting to make a podcast or talk about this issue in any form for, a few years now. And I was always scared and worried about the fact that people are going to be repulsed by me. People are going to judge me. My family is going to find out a lot more stuff than they already know. Not all of my family members know about this as well. I don't want to hurt anyone. And also, every man that I meet is going to have that information if at any point they watch this. So the probability of that is very low, but we'll never know. And no man is going to want to be with me because of how damaged I am. But I also want to open a conversation about it, because I feel like this is the thing that nobody really talks about for one reason or another. I think for the same reason as I didn't want to talk about it for many years. But I want people to know that they're not alone, and there's someone that supports them and someone that's going through the same thing. So here I am. Without further ado, trigger warning: extensive drug use, sexual abuse, self-harm, suicidal thoughts, and everything else that you can think of. So if you are struggling with something like this, seek help and don't watch this. I was raised in Moscow, Russia. I had to switch schools when I was 10 because I was severely bullied. I switched schools and ended up in this environment where at 11, all of my classmates were already getting into drugs one way or another. I remember we went on the school trip where, I don't know, they were taking some sort of pills. I don't know what that was. They were saying they were hallucinated from them. I don't know if that's true, because I didn't take any. They were drinking, but I wasn't, because I wasn't the cool kid. I had anger issues where I once stabbed a guy with a pencil in his arm. I was throwing pebbles at my classmates whenever they insulted me in any way or said something bad. And also, basically, in my school, our parents had to sign this form where they sort of agreed with us leaving the school without them present. So that was made for kids that, weren't getting picked up from school by their parents, and that were allowed to go home alone. And my parents didn't sign that paper, so I kind of wasn't in on all the action, but I really wanted to be. And I was begging my parents to give me permission to do that, but they never wanted to. Maybe they knew that it's going to fuck me up. Maybe they were just worried for my safety. We'll never know. I never asked them. But we had this thing. It's like this area in between buildings at like this playground where everybody from school would gather after class, and they would drink and smoke cigarettes, etc., etc. Actually, my previous school, one of the girls that bullied me very badly started smoking at 10. So I guess I had already thought that was cool. I also talked about my BPD briefly, which I guess explains a lot. Like, I feel like I've had BPD for as long as I can remember. Maybe that messed me up. Maybe somebody else or something else messed me up, but that was that. Anyway, they wouldn't let me go to that thing. I don't remember how I ended up there, but somehow I ended up there. And I made friends with this one guy that didn't treat me like I was a loser. And we ended up drinking together. We ended up smoking cigarettes together. So I sort of started doing that at 12, but I didn't touch drugs at that point, not at all, until my parents sent me to boarding school at 13. I don't know why they did that, because I didn't want to go. For the first few days, I was legitimately like crying, and I begged them to send me back. But as soon as I realized that in this school, nobody knows me and nobody knows my story, I'm not a loser. I actually quickly became a cool kid in my grade and made friends with these two girls, and we were like cool and considered pretty together, where everybody always said I'm ugly. So imagine what that did to my self-esteem. Everybody was already drinking at 13. I got shit-faced for the first time at 13. I started smoking at 13 actively, and my grade was basically a grade of little fuck-ups and wild kids. Just so you get it, my school had to enforce all of the rules the next year after my year. And that's where most of my friends arrived, like real friends that, followed me to my, I guess, further existence in real life. But anyway, so my year was the year of fuck-ups. We were smoking, we were going to this forest behind our school after dinner to, again, smoke and drink and, do all sorts of stuff. And we had this like sort of cafe or like sandwich shop just like down the hill from school, where everybody would go after class or something, or skip classes and go there. People would have sex in the bathroom, and we were drinking and this and that. And even though we looked very young, they still served us alcohol, so nobody gave a shit. I don't remember if I started smoking weed then. I don't think I was smoking weed. I think that came later. I do remember my first line, but not like when I smoked weed, whatever. I was raised, just so you get it, in, like I said, in Moscow, Russia. And back then, drugs and all these things were very much romanticized. I was raised watching movies like The Basketball Diaries and Christian F. and Requiem for a Dream and shit like that. I was listening to musicians that talked about drugs and drama and trauma, maybe because I thought like I could relate to it, because I wasn't feeling so great for most of my life. But I met this girl as well in summer camp that was already self-harming and etc., etc. I knew about this stuff. Anorexia was very much popular then as well. I don't know about, the American Facebook, but on Russian Facebook, which is a completely different platform, we had those, I don't know what you call them, pages, I guess, that were specifically dedicated to anorexia, where they would talk and they would, discuss how to lose weight, blah, blah. I never had anorexia, but I became bulimic in 8th grade. Me and this one girl, we would throw up after dinner, and then I started self-harming actively. And you know what? I don't even know why. And I was spreading lies about myself because I knew that nobody knows about me and my story. So I would tell them shit like I would lie and say that I'd already taken drugs in Russia and, that I had sex and, all those shit teenagers lie about. So I guess everybody thought that I'm a lot crazier than I was. I have no idea what people are saying behind my back that year, but I don't think that really matters right now. What was my train of thought? I'm a little lost. I don't feel good about this. Basically, that girl that I became bulimic with, if that makes sense, was sort of, I guess, doing all this shit before me, like acting like what they called us a whore and things like that. And then she had a suicide attempt. I don't remember how she did it, but what I remember is that she got expelled for it, because that's what my school was like. I guess that's when I learned that this is something that is possible and this is something that I can do. And that was the same year where I'm going to regret talking about it, and I'm not going to get into it too much, but I guess it's important that what I went through. But that was the same year I was sexually abused for the first time. So that year was just generally traumatic. Next year, a lot of other kids arrived and they were older. basically all the people that I would hang out with was a year older than I was. So they were in different grade, but I still somehow went out with them and I was in that sort of group. I don't remember if I was 14 still or 15. I think 14 because that was autumn. But I checked out of school, which is something we could do on the weekend. We would fake letters from our parents just so they let us out for the weekend as if we're spending time with them, but we would just go and, party and blah, blah, blah. So I checked out with this one girl, went to this one girl's house, another girl's house that was a stoner. And before that, I remember there was this one classmate that sat with me at math and he sold me cocaine. And we went to that girl's house and I took my first line. And that was the best thing that ever happened to me at the time. I remember I was so high, I called him and I was like, oh my God, can I get more? This is the best thing that happened to me. Blah, 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 And that's when I realized that this is something I want to do. I know how ridiculous that sounds. I'm fully aware. But anyway, I took that line and that was the best thing that happened to me. Ever since then, most weekends, I started taking drugs. I would do things like I'd go to a train station and whenever I couldn't get drugs, I would go there and try to buy drugs off, people on the street, which was very unsafe. I started taking drugs and partying. I started dating this guy that I ended up dating for 3 years and almost getting married to at 16, major stoner. But I don't remember my first time smoking weed for some reason, not at all, like zero memory of that. Anyway, in school for 2 years, I was just doing drugs every weekend. Not in school though, not in class, but every weekend. And I remember at some point my parents cut me off and I started faking their signature because, the school could give us 100 francs because I was in Switzerland, 100 francs a weekend. So I would get 100 francs and buy myself a gram of Coke. And then at some point at 15, I, for some reason, realized I don't want to be in school anymore. I can't handle this school. So I I guess not dropped out of high school because I just found this random college in London and I left for London. This one girl that graduated that year was going to London, so I ended up living with her. And I think at first I was clean for like 6 months. That's what I remember. And I was not good. I was drinking. I was seeing things like I wasn't well, There was this guy in class that was still doing drugs. Well, not still. I had met him and he was doing drugs. So people were doing drugs around me, but I wasn't. But basically, I dropped out of college. College, not in the US sense, but in the English system, you graduate grade 10 and then you do grade 11 and grade 12 doing A-levels. So I did my first year of A-levels and then I dropped out. I went to University of Arts, London, and that's where I started doing shit. Like shit. I once ended up in an emergency room at a club for drinking absinthe, but like a lot of absinthe and almost fucking. I was in this emergency room where people were, high off MD and like dying. And I was just like, people were like meowing next to me and stuff. Oh shit, that's when I started smoking weed. That's true. I wasn't doing a lot of cocaine then, but I was a stoner. Like I think everybody was smoking around me or something. That was, I think it's 17. So that was my 16. And then 17, I had met these guys that lived with my friends in like student living thing, and they were all stoners, right? So I started smoking with them, and that's when I started smoking a lot of weed. I would smoke in my house. I would smoke all the time, and that's where I started getting a lot of tattoos as well. I would just wake up one morning. I was very impulsive. I was self-harming so badly. At some point, like my entire body, well, not my entire body, like I had so many huge tattoos. I had to go laser half of my body off. And I remember I would go to the forest after my sessions and I would just smoke that away because it was so painful. And at some point I wasn't doing that much cocaine, but I was smoking. When I tell you I was smoking, there was a time where I didn't leave the house for a month. I was smoking with some of my friends who were just staying in. I was not showering for days. It was disgusting. I was just smoking there, like dying, like I wasn't even there. At some point during that period, I had my first overdose on MDMA. my first time taking MDMA, and I took too much, and I started hallucinating. I was hallucinating for like 3 days. I would fall asleep and wake up high and this and that. I was seeing things. I was not in my right mind. I was posting videos on Instagram of me high as shit. Like, it was actually fucking horrible. No hospital or anything, but I definitely overdosed. That was too much. And then at some point, just after that, I started taking drugs again. I remember the day where this happened. I had a little break over the summer where I was still smoking, and then I got back to uni in September, and my friends met this one guy that was, a stoner, and he was kind of like a bad kid. I don't remember where that guy fucking came from, but I remember him coming to their house and being like, oh, I have coke. And I snorted a lot. That's where I started getting back into it. Ever since then, I started snorting. But at some point, I was doing that in secret, and that was fine. Then I was clean for a little bit as well. And then my most active use came when I was 18 or something. I remember my friend caught me, one of my best friends, well, actually my best friend at the time. We went to this one place. It was like a bar that we would go to after uni, after classes. And I came high as fuck. And she was like, are you using again? And I was like, yes. And that was the end of it. I got into this, friendship group where everybody was using. I made friends when everybody was using. Pretty much all of my friends were using, but like severely, right? When I say severely, we were doing drugs in class. We were drinking in class. We would do drugs after class. We would go home and do drugs. We would go to the club and take drugs. There was actually this one time where I was dating this promoter guy. It's not my proudest moment, but I was out for a month. Every single day I was at a club. So I would go to class or skip class and then go to the club a month straight. That was my longest streak. I was using with everyone and everywhere, every chance I got. We had actually a lot of clubs had like back rooms where people would snort. I would just break into those rooms and snort with people that I didn't know. Every single house party I snorted at. Like, I was pretty much high all the fucking time. Like, all the time. What's worse is I started forgetting birthdays. I couldn't show up home. There was this one time where I came home to Moscow during winter break, and I slept for a week straight to the point where my family started looking for me because I had the major come down. Like, I was so high for such a long time that my body just switched off. A little bit before that, during one of those breaks, I got home and my friends from home started using. So I started hanging out with them as well. So every single winter break and stuff, I once went to like a house party, and I remember I drank so much that I started throwing up so fucking severely, and I remember that I'm fully out on the bed, like I'm dying, and all of my ex-classmates from school in Moscow, like guys, gathered around me as I was like almost out in bed, and they were saying, fuck, like, it's such a shame that she's out. I really wanted to fuck her. And then next day I had a nervous breakdown. I physically fought my dad because I wanted to go back to them. And I remember, that is oversharing. But anyway, it was really bad. So my active use in London got really bad. I would see my parents on drugs and they didn't know. I actually forgot to mention something. Like I said, this episode is not scripted, so forgive me for this mess, but I couldn't have scripted it. I didn't want to go through this twice. But after I was sexually abused in my first year of school, that's why I was talking about a girl that had a suicide attempt, because after that happened, I didn't know what to do with myself, and that was my first suicide attempt. It didn't work because it was my first one. I didn't know what to do. My parents had to come to school and everything. It was really bad, but nobody took me away from school. Maybe it's because I didn't want to go. I don't remember. After that, I was self-harming badly in school. Like I said, drinking. And I had my second suicide attempt in school, and that one almost worked until I decided to take myself to the hospital. In uni, when I was actively doing drugs, I had 3 more suicide attempts, and every single one of them happened in silence, and every single one of them, I took myself to the hospital because I later in my adulthood, I guess, realized that this was more of a cry for help rather than me actually wanting to die. There was this one girl that I was using with a lot. She would come over to my house. She was the one buying drugs because I didn't know where to get drugs at that point. I relied on her dealer. I remember there was a point where basically it was like a pre-family situation, and I want to say a piece of my nose fell off, but it's not actually that. It's like, I don't know what you call them in English. It's like those little crusts that formed around my nose because it was, bleeding and things like that. And basically I peeled off my skin. There was a time where I really wanted and had to get a rhinoplasty. I canceled my first surgery because I realized that I don't want to stop doing drugs. My second surgery, I went through with it. I ended up using 6 months or 5 months in because I couldn't handle it anymore. I was drinking and smoking weed in between, but I couldn't take drugs. But, as soon as I figured it was safe, I started doing it again. I stopped at a point where I was going home and doing drugs with people. One of my ex-classmates, that was my best friend at the time. Well, I considered him my best friend. He became addicted to heroin. And I was with him, hanging out, etc., etc. I remember going to this shop with him to sell his mother's gold so he could buy drugs. And the parties were weird. I remember we were once at this party in a club, and then we went back to his house and everybody was taking drugs in the living room. And then at some point I came out to the living room, and there was a plate and there were lines, and it was dark, right? So I couldn't tell the color. And I snorted it, and people were like, oh, that's actually speed. I was like, oh, well, that's nice. In uni, I don't know if you know, but I have this song, Party at My House, that's actually based on the only party that I ever hosted, and I'm never doing that again. Half of uni came in. I remember we were at home thinking nobody's going to show up. The entire school showed up, and I was, doing coke the entire night. And then at some point, a friend of mine was like, do you want some ketamine? And I was like, I'm not sure, but I took ketamine and I had a bad trip. And I remember looking at myself in the mirror, looking into my eyes, and I didn't recognize myself. I was like, shit, what have you done? What have you done to yourself? My 18th birthday as well, I took shrooms. Sorry that I keep going back and forth. Like I said, this isn't scripted. My 18th birthday, I remember I took shrooms, and I was also smoking weed, and I was so high at my birthday dinner. It was an amazing birthday dinner. My parents tried so hard to make me happy, but I was just high off my ass. I couldn't eat. I remember we were eating sushi. I couldn't fucking hold the chopsticks. And now looking back, I'm so embarrassed. I never wanted to do that to my family. I swear to God, I never wanted to hurt anyone. I didn't. And that just happened, right? I was just that. I was an addict. I couldn't stop. Also in uni, I had another friend that I was snorting with. And I remember she couldn't afford drugs. So I was buying drugs for the both of us just so I can get high with her. I was doing so many things that I'm not proud of that I can't even mention. I would do so much shit. I was roofied twice as well. Thank God nothing horrible happened, but I was roofied. There was a point where I was, addicted. I'm not gonna, I don't know if people say addicted to Xanax, but I was addicted to Xanax because I needed something to come down from the highs, and I became addicted to Xanax. I was just taking Xanax every single day in those incredible doses. I was dating a guy at the time that I got with because my best friend betrayed me and I was hurting so much, but that guy was disgusting. We were doing drugs together and he was cheating on me, and he would send me to sleep to the bathtub because I would annoy him so much. And I remember once he was cheating on me and I got so upset that I checked myself into a mental hospital where I went fully naked. I randomly called the hospital. I was in bed. And I was like, please pick me up, because if you don't, I'm actually going to fucking suicide. I'm actually going to die. And they came, and I was fully naked, and I checked myself in. I had to call my parents. They came, but by the time they came, I was already out of it because I called one of my best friends and she signed me out. I was there for I don't know, maybe 12 or 15 hours, something like that. And when I got out, I still went home with that guy. I didn't know any better. After that, I wasn't using much during the summers, but I was using because I spent the summers with my family in a house. So it was very hard and I didn't know where to get drugs there. So I would sometimes get weed, but not cocaine, which was always my drug of choice. Always. I remember we were on this one trip to Marbella with some friends and we bought drugs off the street like randomly. And it was something that was mixed with like wall paint or something. Would still snort it. Like I had no fucking safety like limit. Like I would just do things. And then that summer when I was, before summer, I was with that abusive guy. Again, during the summer, I wasn't using. And then I lost weight that summer, a lot of weight. I was very self-conscious with my body image. I was jealous of people that were anorexic. I went on a diet and I lost, I think, maybe 10 kilos or something. I went back and basically everyone I knew graduated. And my last 6 months where I was with that fucked up guy, I lost all my friends because, abuse, and he was an alcoholic as well. So my friends kind of couldn't take it anymore. So I already didn't have anyone during graduation. I went home for the summer and then I came back and none of my friends were there. So there was this one friend that I made that I knew from college. Again, college, like sixth form college. I became friends with her and we just started using again. She wasn't ever addicted, but I got to a point where I felt so alone that I was doing coke every single day, every single fucking day. Like I would wake up, do coke to just clean my house. I would wake up and do coke to go to the supermarket. Like I couldn't function without cocaine. Then I moved to Paris and it continued that way. There was this one girl that I went to uni with back in London and she was, actively using with me. Then I went back to Paris and we continued using. And I remember my last day of drugs, I had to call and say happy birthday to someone that I really cared about, like honestly cared about, and I still do. And the night before that, I got so fucking high that I woke up and had the worst come down. I had the worst come downs, like, because the drugs we were taking weren't good, right? I remember one of my worst come downs was, in bed at home where I wanted to die. My second worst one, I remember I was doing drugs, I think, for 10 hours straight. And then I went to uni and I had an exam. I was in the smoking area because we had a smoking area in uni and I was just shaking and sweating and wanted to die. And it was horrible. Like I had the worst come down on my life. And of course, after, everything was over, I started doing drugs again because I couldn't handle the come down. So back to the birthday, I had a come down. And I almost missed that person's birthday because I called them and I was like fucking dying. Like I was fucking dying when I did that. What happened in between is I met a guy that eventually ruined my life. I never hid the fact that I'm an addict, just nobody ever cared. But he ended up being the worst abuser of my existence. That guy abused me financially, physically, verbally, emotionally. I ended up in a police precinct for 32 hours because of him, because he beat me up. But they didn't care. They wanted to have a court hearing for both of us. Then after that, he was still stealing money from me and stealing my jewelry. I don't have half of my jewelry still because he stole most of it and sold it for money. He threatened to kill my dogs during COVID because during COVID, I went back home to Moscow. And because the flights were difficult, I had another dog at the time. I had two, not just my dog now, but he kept threatening me to kill them for the 2 months that I was home. Like when I could fly out, I did. And it was horrible. Like he wouldn't let me leave the house. He was still following me and stuff. But I managed to pick up the dogs and picked up the dogs. That guy also stole my fucking passport twice when I tried to leave. And nobody believed me, right? Like my friends turned away from me because they couldn't handle anymore. His sister didn't fucking believe me when he stole my passport. I messaged her. I was like, dude, I can't leave because he stole my passport. She didn't give a shit. And during COVID, I was so traumatized to the point where I couldn't handle it anymore. And that's where I went to therapy for my BPD. Thing is, I never seek therapy for drugs, right? They were just a part of my BPD always. So treatment for BPD went very well, but I at the time, remember, refused medication because I was so terrified that I'm going to get addicted to it. Like I got addicted to Xanax, even though technically I couldn't, but I was really scared. Like I became terrified of drugs. Once I got really clean, I got terrified of drugs. I still remember in my life, and I was like, drugs brought me to that guy that ruined my life, that ruined my parents' life, that was dangerous as shit. When I moved back this is why I moved back to Moscow, honestly, from Paris, because he followed me. He followed me everywhere. And when I was in Moscow, he threatened to come. He was still sending me emails saying how fucked up I am and crazy I am and how he's going to come and fuck me up. And, it was very, very, very dangerous. So I stopped using drugs back then. I was scared of myself, so I stopped for 8 years. For 8 years, I would fucking remove myself from any environment that had drugs. I couldn't even look at drugs because when I look at drugs, I can't handle myself. I would leave situations. I started telling people, my close people, that I am an addict. So they would help me stay clean and remove me also from situations where people were taking drugs, any kind of drug. Like I knew at the point where I would take anything people gave me. And honestly, I think I only got to a point where that didn't matter as much, maybe a year ago. I couldn't even stay in rooms where people smoked weed. I was sort of okay with it. Like I wasn't craving weed, but it still made me uncomfortable because I started wanting drugs. And I recently posted a Reels that prompted me to record this as well. And one person said that a relapse is not something that happens in a day. A relapse is something that happens over a period of time. And now that I look at it, my relapse has been coming for a long time. I always drank, and I still drink, but there were times in between where I would use alcohol as drugs when I couldn't take drugs. When I didn't have drugs, even during the summers and things like that, I would drink a lot. When I say a lot, like bottles and bottles of things. But at some point that got easier as well. But anyway, I was drinking, and due to a course of certain events, I started craving drugs. I literally felt my demons speaking to me in my head, like I felt them crawl under my skin, telling me to do things. I fought it. I didn't do any drugs, but that was about 3 years ago. But it was really hard. When I tell you it was really hard, it was really hard. Then I got a little better. I wasn't craving them as much. I didn't have anyone in my circle that was doing drugs, so that was good. I wasn't telling any new people in my life that I'm an addict. I felt good. I really felt good. And then things started sort of getting fucked up. My family started getting fucked up, like some things happened. There was a lot of pressure in my life. And just a lot of things were happening that mentally fucked me up. And I think that was sort of leading to what happened to me a month ago. What's funny is that I was in Berlin in late November. And I remember I went to a club, like a techno party. Everybody was doing drugs. I didn't. I was just listening to music. I was happy. And I was looking at them and I was like, oh my God, you guys look so fucked up. And I was walking home and I recorded a message to a friend of mine. I was like, I don't get people that choose drugs over life. That was literally so recent. But something happened to me. I was at a party. I'm not going to go into details. And I met a guy that I haven't seen before, a guy that nobody knew. And he was really good looking. He felt safe enough for my friends to not feel like he's going to murder me. He was like, do you want to go out with me to a club around the corner? And I was already very drunk, right? Like very drunk. And I was like, yeah, sure, go. I felt like this guy was incredibly safe. And he was, by the way, which I applaud him for. Like, amazing. That guy took care of me. That guy always asked me how I'm doing. That guy was watching me. That guy gave his number to my friend, like, for, her to find me if I get lost. Like, that guy was fucking magic. But as we're walking to the club, he was like, do you take drugs? And I was like, nah, I'm clean. And he was like, but I have drugs. Or something like that. I barely remember. He wasn't like offering. He just said that he's going to do drugs. And I was like, okay, I'll have some too. What's funny is that I didn't think about it for a second. I was just like, yeah. And he was like, I don't want to be responsible for your relapse. And I was like, listen, I've been wanting to do it for so long that trust me, it's fine. So we go to the club. I go into the bathroom. I take a line. And you know what's crazy? I go on the dance floor. You know where my mind went? I was like, finally. I was like, I'm myself again. This is what I've been craving this entire time. This is what I needed. This is what life is about. I was so happy. I ended up, snorting with him throughout the night. And I was like, fuck, like that's the best night of my life. And then I ended up going home. I went home, fell asleep, surprisingly, woke up in the morning, and I realized that I can't handle it. I need more. So I started looking in my pockets, started licking my pockets, hoping that I'm going to find something. Then I went to my friends and I told them about it. And I told my friend, I was like, listen, I'm asking you not to yell at me for a little bit, for a few days, because right now I'm in a bad place. Like, please don't do that. And we spoke about it. She was like, you sort of fucked up. I'm like, yeah, I know. But I was crushing on the guy terribly. I was like, I don't care that he does drugs. Like, I just want to be with him, which is, I think it's the drugs talking, to be honest. But for like a few days, I was craving them. And what's funny is that now that I'm older and I guess I'm post-therapy as well, I could hear myself think. And you know what my brain was doing to me? My brain was going, this is what you're made for. Everything that happened in between doesn't matter. Like, this is you. This is what you're good at. This is your true self. Like, why did you ever give this up? Like, this is good. The thing is, like, my brain was telling me that this is almost my destiny, my, thing that I'm meant to be doing with my life. And I believed that. I was like, why would I ever quit? Then I was going through things. Like, for a few weeks, I was going through things. There came a point where I was like, maybe if I just use it for fun, it's not going to, harm me. Like, it's fine. But I held myself because that person also asked me whether I want a number off a dealer. And I said no, because I was like, if I get a number, I'm going to start using. So at least I had some sort of sanity. But my brain was still doing that to me. And I was like, you know what? When I'm back in LA, I'm going to just do it. Like, it's fine. Then came remorse and hatred. I was like, I fucking hate myself for doing this. Then came a hole in my chest. A BPD, like a very borderline hole in my chest. If you're borderline or if you know the symptoms, you know what I'm talking about. Like, it's here and it hurts. It physically hurts. And I was so depressed. I was like, I am alone. Like, I pretty much went back to the mindset that I was in when I was actively using. And I was like, what the actual fuck? Like, what is happening to me? And that day I was alone. And it was just fucking tragic. Like, I didn't know what to do with myself. It was horrible. And I was like, you know what? If you continue doing this is how you're going to feel all the time. So I sort of tried to stop myself from sort of craving it. Then came shame. I was ashamed of myself. I didn't want to tell people. I still don't tell people unless the topic sort of naturally comes up in the conversation. I was ashamed of myself. I was like, dude, you're so fucking dirty. Like, how could you do this to yourself? But it's not even like, it's weird because it wasn't like full on shame in a sense where I wasn't being like, oh, I'm fucked up, like I should, do this and do that, or like hurt myself. It was just this shame that was under my skin that I couldn't pinpoint where it came from, but it made me not want to tell people. And then I started telling people and it started becoming real. And I was very surprised how nobody told me that I'm messed up. Everybody was like, listen, that's part of it. That's part of addiction and part of, getting healthier and stuff. Like, relapses happen, like, it's fine. And I was also surprised when I posted reels today about my relapse. People started commenting the same thing. There wasn't one comment where people said something bad. Everybody was like, it's okay, you're fine, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, you know what? Like, that support means so much. And that made me feel so much better. And it made me record this podcast as well, because I was like, I want other people to feel that way as well. I want other people to know that this happened to me and I'm okay. And I'm okay. And it's okay. Even though now I don't know what I am and I said that in my reels as well. What do you call a person that was an addict for 7 years, clean for 8, and now relapsed and clean for 1? Like, who am I? Am I still an addict? Am I in recovery? Am I clean? Like, what am I? What's worse is I still can't say whether I'm going to stay clean because now I'm scared of myself. Because what's worse is all these years, I would hold on to the fear. I was so scared to go back to the person that I was and see those things through my eyes again, because the worst thing about addiction for me is that when you have your memories, it's your hands that you see. You can't project it on anybody else. You can't blame anybody else for it, regardless of how other people impacted your well-being at the time. You're the only one to blame, because there's so many ways to deal with trauma and things, but you chose drugs. And when you think about things and you see your hands, that's when you're like, fuck, I did all that. I did all of those fucked up, unspeakable things with my hands. I lost my train of thought again. Anyway, I know that I barely made any sense. I'm fully aware there was no structure to this, but I guess what I needed is to let all of it out and maybe partially remind myself of how bad it was, because I don't know if I made it clear. It was really bad. And a lot of things that I didn't mention that drugs led me to, that was very bad. My friend calling me when they overdosed. When I was already clean for a few months, there's this guy, I was seeing a friend that was still doing drugs, and while I was with her, a guy died in a hotel room because of an overdose, and I had to go with her because she didn't speak French and I did, and talk to the police and stuff and explain what happened. I know some people that still use. This one girl that I know still uses is so skinny that it scares me. Oh, I remember what I was saying. I was saying that I was holding on to my fear. I was scared to go back and do all the things that I did and end up in a place that I ended up in. But now that I relapsed, my brain is like, oh, that wasn't scary. That was actually very pleasant. Yeah, it's so much fun. So I don't have anything to grasp onto to stay clean. So what I do now is whenever I feel like using, I remember my family. And I know that I can't let them down like that. The relationships that I rebuilt with my family are so great. And we're in such a great place with everyone that I cannot allow myself to sabotage that. I cannot allow myself to do that. I cannot allow myself to fuck up like that. Not again. What drugs were telling me after my relapse is that my life is shit. And sometimes I do think that when I'm, because I am closer to where I want it to be, always, but I'm not there yet. So I burn out a lot and I tell myself a lot that I'm fucking up. And I feel bad about myself sometimes and I beat myself up over a lot of things. So drugs were telling me is that is bullshit. You should just do drugs. Like that's what you're good at. You're not good at anything else. But when I think about it, if I start doing drugs, I know myself, I'm gonna quit music. I'm gonna lose all my money because that happened because of drugs. And when I looked at my credit card bills, I was shocked because I didn't realize that I was spending this much money on drugs. But when I saw it, I was like, oh fuck, okay, there is a problem. Didn't stop me, but There was a time where I was using so much that I only fed on lemons. There was a time where I went to spend New Year's in a particular country with that best friend at the time, the same friend that caught me using again when I started using again. And I went to this house party where I got so drunk because when you're on coke, you don't feel the alcohol, right? So I got so drunk that I went completely nuts. I was crying for a few hours and she went to pick me up at 5 a.m. I was staying at her house, in a nearby building from her parents. And it was New Year's the next day as well. I almost slept through New Year's. I remember I woke up at 7 or 8 or something p.m. because I was so drunk and high. I got so shit-faced. I'm surprised by how I didn't overdose that day, honestly. And I tried to lie to her and say that I'm fully sober. She was like, girl. It was embarrassing. Her driver came to pick me up as well, I think. I'm pretty sure. I don't remember, but I was high. Everybody was fucking high. It was a nightmare, to be honest. So drugs took me to a lot of places that I didn't like. I'm not willing to. I know that I will lose all my friends not even because they're going to turn away from me. You can try to help a person as hard as you can, but if the person doesn't want to be fixed, I think people have the right to turn away from them because at the end of the day, that's their sanity as well. So I know that eventually I'm going to lose everyone and I'm going to make friends that do drugs again, and I'm going to get stuck in that cycle. And deep inside, I'm not willing to ruin my life. I love my life. And I always say that I love life. One of my friends that I spoke about my relapse with asked me straight up, she was like, "Do you want to live?" And I was like, "Yeah." She was like, "That's your answer." And I was like, "Okay, yeah, that makes sense." So I guess what I want to say is it's okay to lose your way sometimes. We all do, and we're all human. We're only human. But what's important is you have your life. That is beautiful. And if you don't, you still have a chance to rebuild it. Everybody does. We have a long life ahead of us, regardless of how it feels. And you'll always have an opportunity to make amends, to feel better, to, hey, Curly, to do all these things. You can fix your life and you can get better. And honestly, the world around us is so beautiful, no matter how fucked up, no matter how many problems we have. We've got trees and you can travel, and we've got animals. Well, apart from, humans destroying everything they touch. But that doesn't matter because the world is still gorgeous. And there's so many things you can see. There's so many things you can experience. And you're not going to experience that if you're on drugs 24/7. And I guarantee you, if you don't lose yourself completely, at some point when you wake up from, the haze, you're going to regret it. And that's going to haunt you for the rest of your life, because it haunts me. I feel like I fully missed out on 7 years of my life, on crucial years of my life that were my teenage years that could have gone completely different. I personally say that I started living at 24 when I found therapy post that abuser guy. And yeah, it's great that I'm here and I'm alive and, I get to experience life. But what's not great is that, like what I spoke about in my previous episodes, is that I lost a lot of my memories. My PTSD is bad. My anxiety is bad. Like, my brain is kind of, not healthy. Let's just put it that way. Yet, I still love life. So find your anchor. Find something that you can grasp onto. If you cannot, there's no shame in seeking help. It's very hard to seek help. But once you do, and once you're in there with someone you can trust me when I say it gets better. If you don't want to do it for others, do it for yourself, because at the end of the day, you're the only thing you've got. Food for thought.